Stratagonal here. Now today, we have the 3 Minutes on the Clock podcast. This is the 7th NFL mock draft. The first 6 are some of my most viewed videos ever. You can check most popular, the top 5 are all NFL mock drafts in the series, so I appreciate all the support. Now, a common theme on every single mock draft is I get a decent bit of dislikes, I get a decent bit of hate in the comments, just because people agree with or disagree with one or two of the picks, which is sort of weak on their part. We weren't put on the earth to spread negativity, but if you want to be hateful, then go right ahead. It makes yourself look bad. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This one is actually 3 rounds. My first mock draft that I'm doing 3 rounds. Pretty much all of them have been 2 rounds, except for the first one, which is only 1. There are also trades in this mock draft, so let's get right into it. With the first pick, the Arizona Cardinals select Kyler Murray, quarterback, Oklahoma. Now, believe it or not, this is obviously my 7th mock draft, and this is the first time that I've had the Cardinals getting Kyler Murray. And you're probably thinking, oh, Octagonal, you're so stupid. Why didn't you have them getting him before? Well, at least the first 5, there was no Kyler to the Cardinals rumors, and then the last one I talked about how I'm not sold that Arizona actually wants him, so I had the Giants trading up, and I'm still not sold that Arizona wants him. I wouldn't be surprised if this is just an act by Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim to make it look like the Cardinals are giving up on Josh Rosen and the fact that they would want Kyler so they can have more desperate teams giving them bigger trade packages. So I really like what Arizona's doing if that's what they're actually doing. However, thinking about it, Kyler Murray does make sense. Josh Rosen is a very prototypical quarterback, whereas Kyler Murray isn't. It's going to be much more challenging for coordinators to game plan against him. There will be more fans in the seats in Arizona. Kyler Murray, yeah, he's not the biggest, but Russell Wilson's under 6 foot as well, and he has a Super Bowl ring, and he should have 2, but Seattle threw the ball at the 1-yard line, so he only has 1, but Kyler Murray is a very different type of quarterback. Yeah, the NFC West defensive coordinators know a little bit more about Russell Wilson. However, Kyler Murray, he's faster than Russell Wilson. He's the better prospect coming out of college than Russell Wilson. So I think this is a very intriguing fit. With the second pick, the 49ers select Nick Bosa, edge rusher, Ohio State. The 49ers need edge help. Yes, they did just trade for Dee Ford, who had a very good season last year of Kansas City. However, he's on the last year of his contract. And even so, they need more edge presence. So I think he will be a very nice addition to their defensive line, which already has a lot of talent. DeForest Buckner, Solomon Thomas, Eric Armstead. Very solid group. Eric Armstead and Solomon Thomas, sort of like hybrid guys. I would say Solomon has played a lot better inside, and Armstead, sort of a giant question mark where he'd fit. With the third pick, the New York Jets select Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle, Alabama. Him and Leonard Williams, along with Henry Anderson, would create a monster defensive line for the Jets. One of the better units in the league. Yeah, I would say they have bigger needs. However, Williams is, on most people's opinion, the best player on the board. He's my second behind Ed Oliver, and that's just because I love Ed Oliver. I'm very high on Quinnen Williams. I like him more than Nick Bosa, so that says something. And then with the fourth pick, the Oakland Raiders select Josh Allen, edge rusher, Kentucky. The Raiders registered, I believe, 13 sacks a season ago, which was dead last by a long margin. Allen can get to the quarterback. He's decent in coverage. He can even play a little bit of inside linebacker, outside linebacker, defensive end. So mostly an edge rusher, which is where I classified him, but you can use him in a number of ways. John Gruden's going to love this kid. Great pick for Oakland. With the fifth pick, we have the first trade as the Dolphins are moving up with the Bucs. Tampa Bay will be getting pick 1378 in a 2020 second-round pick, which isn't the most value. I feel like the Bucs are easy negotiators, as seen by the Josh Allen move up that the Bills made last year. I don't think that the Bucs got extremely great value, but remember that 2020 second is basically going to be a late first round pick because Miami's going to be terrible next year. So sort of view it as like that if you're a Bucs fan and you don't love this trade. However, I have the Dolphins getting DWAYNE Haskins, quarterback, Ohio State. I expect Ryan Fitzpatrick to start most of this season. They did sign him. Haskins is not good out of the pocket. The Dolphins definitely need to improve their O-line. Their left side is good with Laramie Tunsil and Josh Sitton. However, the right side isn't. They lost Jawan James, and they could look to improve that. I know the Dolphins could just tank. get a super high draft pick next year and get like Tua, Justin Herbert, Jake Fromm. However, if they like Haskins, which I don't know if they do, I don't know what the Dolphins scouts are thinking. I'm not like Mel Kiper. I don't get insider information, which is why my mock drafts may not be as quote-unquote good as theirs. Anyway, back to the point. The Dolphins obviously need a quarterback, and Dwayne Haskins, he has a very good arm, debatably the most polished in this draft class. Not saying he's super NFL ready, and I think this is a nice pick for Miami. They move right ahead of the Giants to do it. And speaking of the Giants, they go Andre Dillard, offensive tackle from Washington State. Their right tackle is currently Chad Wheeler. That's not going to cut it. Dillard's very athletic, good combine, good Senior Bowl, lots of production for Washington State. Phenomenal pass blocker for Eli next year, and then whoever the long-term quarterback will be. And I think this is a home run for the Giants. With the 7th pick, the Jaguars take T.J. Hawkinson, tight end, Iowa. Nick Foles loved getting it to Zach Ertz in Philadelphia. So does Wentz, but that's mainly because Zach Ertz is such a good tight end. Probably top 2 along with Travis Kelce. But obviously, a good tight end is very important for an offense. We know what Zach Ertz did with Nick Foles in Philly. So I've been getting Hawkinson from Iowa. Good pass catcher, good run blocker. All around, very talented player. With the 8th pick, my Detroit Lions select Rashawn Gary, defensive lineman, Michigan. Yeah, the Lions did just sign Trey Flowers. They have Snacks Harrison and Deshaun Hand inside. They have guys like Trey Flowers, Romeo Okwara as edge rushers. That's decent, but that's not great. Gary fits Patricia's scheme. He can be the main end alongside Trey Flowers, and Okwara is going to be more of a rotational guy. Rashawn Gary was the pick I had to the Lions in my first 3 mock drafts, but ever since then I've had us going with, like, Greedy Williams or Devin White. I would probably choose White in this situation. However, I would be happy with Gary. Lots of production as a sophomore, not really as much last year, but that's because defense is focused on him. It's not his fault. A lot of people don't like him because of his lack of production last year, but it's not his fault. I think he's very underrated, and I think he would be a good pickup for our defense. With the 9th pick, the Buffalo Bills select Ed Oliver, defensive tackle from Houston. Yes, this could be an offensive player like DK Metcalf or Jonah Williams. However, Kyle Williams just retired. The Bills have really focused on offense and free agency, so now it's time to focus on defense. They're getting the player who I think is the most talented and has the most upside in this whole entire draft class in Ed Oliver. He had a little bit of a down year at Houston. However, he's super athletic. I believe in his pro day he ran a 4.75, which is blazing fast for a defensive tackle. Yeah, he didn't have a great season, however, I don't think his stock dropping is justified. He did miss a little bit of time this year. He did have an altercation with his coach. However, I don't think that's a big deal. The talent is there. We've seen undersized defensive tackles like Aaron Donald dominate, and I think Ed Oliver can as well. Oliver's not a great pass rusher, but neither was Aaron Donald coming out of college, and Donald just led the NFL in sacks this year. I think Aaron Donald is the far and away best player in the league. Like, most talented. Yeah, maybe he's not the most important like Tom Brady is, but Donald is the most talented in the league, and Ed Oliver is very similar to him. With the 10th pick, the Denver Broncos select DK Metcalf, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Not a pick I've seen a lot, however, the Broncos did trade away Demaryius Thomas last year, who's a big-bodied receiver, and they have Courtland Sutton, who also is a big-bodied receiver. However, you have Sutton on the outside, you have Emmanuel Sanders in the slot, but where's your other outside guy? And the ceiling that DK Metcalf has is absolutely incredible. 4.3, 340 for his size. Has some similarities to Calvin Johnson, and as a Lions fan, I know a lot about Calvin Johnson, my favorite athlete of all time, and I don't want to necessarily compare him to Calvin. DK is injury prone, not a clean route runner yet, and he's probably not as good as Calvin, clearly. However, this is a phenomenal pick for Denver. With the 11th pick, the Bengals get Devin White, linebacker, LSU. The Bengals need help on their linebacking core. White, I think, is the best player on the board. Loved him at LSU, and I think he will be great in the NFL. With the 12th pick, the Packers select Noah Fant, tight end, Iowa. As a Lions fan, this makes me very sad. I think Fant is a better prospect than Hawkinson. I just love Noah Fant. I think he fits the modern NFL with his athleticism. Reminds me a lot of Evan Engram coming out of college. Ingram's had a solid start to his career, not great, but I think Fant is a more polished tight end, whereas Engram is more of a wide receiver playing tight end. I think Fant will have a little bit more success than Engram, and Fant has a much better quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. I think this is a phenomenal selection for Green Bay, A++, and if the Packers have a really good draft, I would not be shocked if they get back in the postseason, as much as that hurts me to say. The 13th pick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Montez Sweat, edge rusher, Mississippi State. Now, before we talk about the pick, as you can see, it is yellow. That's because this is from a draft day trade that we already talked about. If you notice, Dwayne Haskins was blue. That's a draft day trade that we're just showing. So I figured I'd tell you guys just so you figured that out. So Montez Sweat, 4.42 40-yard dash. Very good Senior Bowl, very good combine. The Bucs need help on the edge. In my last mock, I had the Bucs picking him at 5. So now they get him at 13. I think this is good value. I'm not totally sold on Montez Sweat. However, I do like him. As a Lions fan, I'd be fine with him at 8. And I think this is a very nice pick for Tampa Bay. With the 14th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, Clemson. Wilkins, there aren't many players in this draft who have more college production than him. He was excellent at Clemson. The Falcons need someone inside alongside Grady Jarrett, who's only on a 1-year franchise tag, might I add. So they could need 2 defensive tackles, and this shores up one of those spots. I don't know if Wilkins has a crazy ceiling, however, I like his floor. Sort of like his teammate Clelin Ferrell, who we'll be talking about in just a few minutes. So I really like this pick for Atlanta. With the 15th pick, the Washington Redskins select Drew Lock, quarterback, Missouri. Yeah, they traded for Case Keenum. He's not the answer. Lock and Jones are on the board. However, I do think it's more likely that the pick is Lock. He had a very solid combine. He definitely impressed me. I was surprised that his measurables and his athletic testings were as good as they were, and I think this is a nice pick for Washington. With the 16th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Greedy Williams, cornerback, LSU. Corner does not seem like the biggest need for Carolina. Greg Olson's getting older. I had them going Noah Fant last time. I think edge rusher is a gigantic need. You could look at wide receiver as well with the loss of Devin Funches. However, cornerback is a need that most people don't really talk about, and I think it is a need. James Bradbury, he's meh, and he's also on the last year of his contract. Dante Jackson, he was picked in the 2nd round last year. He's great. Phenomenal rookie year, but I don't think Bradbury's the long-term guy around him. So pairing the LSU duo of Dante Jackson and Greedy Williams, I think that would be one of the best cornerback tandems in the NFL. I think those two would be great together. Greedy Williams, good ball hawk, very athletic. He's very long, very lean, and gives you everything you need in a corner. With the 17th pick, the Giants get Devin Bush, inside linebacker from Michigan. Bush is a very good leader, very good combine. He is somewhat raw, however, the Giants do have Alec Ogletree and B.J. Goodson, which are decent band-aids for a year if Bush struggles during training camp or the preseason. However, I think that both Ogletree and Goodson are not the future of their defense. Neither of them are great, and I think this is a very interesting, unusual pick for the Giants, but it makes sense. With the 18th pick, the Vikings select Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle, Florida. There are a lot of good offensive linemen falling, and yes, teams are desperate for O-linemen. There have been ridiculous contracts handed out this free agency. Bobby Hart, 3 years, $21 million. Billy Turner, 4 years, $28 million. Jawan James, 4 years, $50 million. Trent Brown, 4 years, $64 million. However, teams that have spent a lot of money on free agents on O-line also don't want to have to use their first-rounders on O-line like the Bengals and the Packers, who want to worry about other things. However, the Vikings have not overpaid for any O-linemen, and even if they did, their offensive line is so bad that they still would need to pick one. So they're going to have a choice of many great offensive linemen. Guys like Jonah Williams, Cody Ford are both on the board. However, I have them going with Jawan Taylor, an offensive tackle from Florida. He's likely going to play right tackle. Very agile, very athletic. I think him and Brian O'Neill can be a very nice tackle pairing. I think O'Neill's probably a little bit more of a right tackle as well, so one of them will have to move to left. With the 19th pick, the Titans select Brian Burns, edge rusher, Florida State. I think this is the same pick that I had in my last mock. The Titans need someone alongside Harold Landry to get to the quarterback. Burns is a very well-rounded player. He had a good combine. And overall, I think this is a really good pick for Tennessee. And then with the 20th pick, the Steelers get Byron Murphy, cornerback from Washington. Very instinctive player. Very hard worker. He had an okay combine. Wasn't great. And will pretty much be the second corner off the board without a question. I think Greedy Williams has locked himself at number 1. However, I think Murphy is definitely higher than DeAndre Baker on the cornerback totem pole. That is a need for the Steelers, and this is solid value. We have a trade here at pick 21. The Seahawks are moving down 8 spots. It's the Kansas City Chiefs moving up. The Seahawks get pick 28 as well as pick 93, which is the Chiefs' third-round selection. Kansas City gets this pick as well as a 2027, and they're going to take CLELIN FERRELL, edge rusher from Clemson. If Seattle keeps this pick, FERRELL would make a ton of sense. However, it makes even more sense for the Chiefs. Seattle needs to get more draft picks. They only have like 5. And CLELIN FERRELL is really good value here at 21. Phenomenal career at Clemson. The Chiefs cut Justin Houston. They traded away Dee Ford. So they need pass rushers. They have Chris Jones, and that's about it. With the value here, this is an excellent selection for Kansas City, who has sort of gotten a little bit worse on defense since free agency. They pretty much swapped Eric Berry for Tyrann Mathieu, and considering Berry's had trouble staying on the field, that's an upgrade. However, they've lost Steven Nelson, they've lost Dee Ford, and they've lost Justin Houston. With a 22nd pick, the Ravens get Zach Allen, edge rusher, Boston College. The Ravens lost plenty of good players on their front 7. Zadarius Smith, T. Sizzle, C.J. Mosley. So Zach Allen, one of the best defensive players on the board for the front 7. Good pick for Baltimore. With the 23rd pick, the Texans get Jonah Williams, offensive lineman, Alabama. They have their choice between Ford and Williams. Both of them somehow fall into their laps, and they're going to go with Jonah Williams, phenomenal at Alabama, and he's going to be a really good player in the NFL, and the Texans are getting a steal, one of the biggest winners of this draft class. With the 24th pick, the Raiders get DeAndre Baker, cornerback from Georgia. The Raiders need to improve their secondary as well as their front 7. Their front 7 is a little bit more dire, however, their secondary isn't particularly good either. Garyon Conley is a giant question mark, and then other than him, they don't have a lot of talent at corner, so DeAndre Baker, who's had a phenomenal season with Georgia, won the Jim Thorpe Award, very solid selection for Oakland. With the 25th pick, the Philadelphia Eagles select Dalton Risner, offensive lineman from Kansas State. Now, yes, Cody Ford is on the board. He is a better prospect, and most people, including my opinion, than Dalton Risner. However, Cody Ford is a right guard and a right tackle. Eagles don't really need help on the right side. They have Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson. Yes, Brooks did just suffer a serious injury in the divisional round against the Saints. I forget what the injury was, but I don't think it was pretty. However, they could use some help on the left side. Jason Peters is an old man, and they have High Vaitai and Isaac Seumalo after that. Seumalo's decent, Vaitai, not really. Jason Kelsey, solid at center. So you're probably thinking the Eagles' offensive line is not a dire need for them. However, Dalton Risner is versatile. He can play anywhere on the line. The Eagles' offensive line has had some injury stuff in the past, and not to mention, if Lane Johnson were to get busted for steroids, he'd be suspended for 2 seasons. Yes, 2 seasons, because he's already been busted for using the juice twice. So, this may not seem like a phenomenal pick in the eyes of Eagles fans. However, I do think it makes plenty of sense. With 26th pick, the Indianapolis Colts select Marquise Brown, wide receiver, Oklahoma. I've had him going to the Raiders a lot, and I'm really hoping the Raiders do get Marquise Brown, as he is the cousin of Antonio, and he would stretch the field very nicely for Oakland. However, I have Indianapolis getting him 1 pick before. As I mentioned, he can stretch the field, very nice deep threat. Him and T.Y. Hilton are very similar players. I think they complement each other well. And then, yeah, they're not big red zone guys, but that's why you have Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle at the tight end spots. Love this pick for Indy. It gets Andrew Luck, another deep threat down the field in case T.Y. Hilton is covered. With the 27th pick, the Oakland Raiders select Cody Ford, offensive lineman from Oklahoma. Ford can play right guard and right tackle. And yes, they have Colton Miller. They have Gabe Jackson. So it doesn't seem like that big of a need. However, I think it makes sense for Colton Miller to move over to left guard. Trent Brown can play left tackle, who they overpaid. Now, yeah, I mentioned earlier that teams that overpaid O-linemen aren't as desperate. However, Oakland has 3 first-round picks, and with Ford on the board, it makes sense. And then the Chargers at 28 get Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle from Notre Dame. They need help in the interior. They have, Brandon Mebane, that's about it. So I think Tillery can complement the Chargers' pass rush of Bosa and Ingram. With the 29th pick, the Seattle Seahawks select Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware. I have Adderley as my number 1 safety in the class, and the Seahawks just lost Earl Thomas, so why not get a player who is somewhat similar, as Adderley shares a lot of the same physical traits. They're both very athletic. They're both pretty good in coverage. I would say, obviously, Adderley probably won't be as good as Earl Thomas, and definitely not from the get-go, as he is somewhat raw. However, the Seahawks trade down 8 spots and get someone who I think is good value at 21, so now getting someone who's good value at 29, that's even better. With the 30th pick, the Green Bay Packers select N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, Arizona State. Harry is not necessarily a deep threat, not necessarily someone who's going to get you 30, 40-yard touchdowns often. He doesn't have crazy straight line speed, however. He's a very well-rounded player, good route runner, good hands, and he's going to be that short target guy for Aaron Rodgers, sort of that safety net, whereas Noah Fant, he's a deep threat at tight end. With the 31st pick, the LA Rams select Garrett Bradbury, center in NC State. Yeah, John Sullivan, I think, played center. He's not terrible, but he is getting older, and I think Bradbury has the athletic skill to move over to guard. They did just lose Roger Saffold. At the other guard spot, they have Austin Blythe, who's a decent player. However, you start 2 guards, not 1. So I think Bradbury can make a very big impact. And then with pick 32, I have the New England Patriots trading out of this. So the Arizona Cardinals move up. The Patriots will be getting quarterback Josh Rosen, as well as a 2024 round pick, and the Cardinals get this selection. Patriots know Tom Brady's not getting any younger. They need to get his heir apparent. And Josh Rosen, very accurate, more of a short pass guy, sort of like Tom Brady. I think Rosen can learn a lot from Tom Brady and that system, and I think that's a great move for New England, as well as Arizona. They don't need both Murray and Rosen. And then I have them getting a nice weapon for Kyler Murray and A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Sort of like N'Keal Harry, Brown does not have a crazy ceiling, not necessarily a deep threat, but he's a good route runner, good hands, and he's a little bit faster than N'Keal Harry. I think he's a little bit better of a prospect than N'Keal Harry, but I think it's awfully close between the two. Most people say N'Keal Harry, and for a while I've said N'Keal Harry as well, and as I said earlier, I don't think there's a big difference between them. However, I just think Brown has had a little bit more production at Ole Miss. He has had better receivers around him, but I think he's had worse quarterback play because I'm a pretty big fan of Manny Wilkins at Arizona State, so I think Harry's had the luxury of being the main target with a good quarterback. For rounds 2 and 3, we're going to be going rapid fire. So the Cardinals get Jeffrey Simmons, D-tackle, Mississippi State. Huge risk, off the field issues, plus he just tore his ACL. Probably not going to play this year, however. He is a top 10 talent, and Arizona, they just traded up, so they have back-to-back picks. I think it's worth the risk. With the 34th pick, Colts get Jalen Ferguson, edge rusher, Louisiana Tech. Ferguson has had so much production in his career with the Bulldogs, and I think the Colts need to improve their pass rush. They have some decent guys like Jabal Sheard, Kamoko Toure, however, I don't think that's enough. With pick 35, Raiders get Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. The Raiders need help in their running game. They just added Cody Ford a couple of selections ago, and I think Josh Jacobs could be a nice pickup. He hasn't gotten the most snaps at Alabama, however, when he's been in the game, he's made some very big plays. With pick 36, I have the Chargers trading up with San Francisco. I have the Niners getting the Chargers second, third, as well as a 2024th, and the Chargers moving ahead 1 pick from the Giants to select Daniel Jones, quarterback, Duke. So the Dolphins and the Chargers both respectively move up 1 pick before the Giants to get quarterbacks. Phillip Rivers isn't getting any younger, and Jones can sort of redshirt for a good 2 or 3 seasons before having to start. So now that Jones is off the board, who the Giants probably would take in this situation, they get Jonathan Abram, safety, Mississippi State. He's a very hard hitter, very old school safety. I think him and Jabril Peppers can be a good tandem. They signed Antoine Bethea, who can be a good band-aid for a year. Abram doesn't have to be too good as a rookie. And speaking of safeties, the Jaguars get Deontay Thompson from Alabama. They cut Deshaun Gibson, and I think Thompson and Ronnie Harrison, who also went to Alabama, can be a nice safety tandem. With pick 39, Bucks get J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, wide receiver, Stanford. Good route runner, good short catch guy, a little bit worse versions of Harry and A.J. Brown. They lost Deshaun Jackson. They lost Adam Humphries, and I think he will sort of replace Adam Humphries as that short slot receiver. Now they just need a deep threat to go on the outside with Mike Evans. Then with pick 40, the Bills get Irv Smith Jr., tight end, Alabama. Charles Clay isn't great. Josh Allen would love to have a good tight end in Smith, who I'm very high on. Good pass catcher, good run blocker, like the pick for Buffalo. With the 41st pick, the Denver Broncos select Greg Little, offensive tackle, Ole Miss. Broncos fans are questioning this pick. They have Garrett Bowles at left tackle. They have Jawan James at right tackle. So what's the need to get another one? Well, I think this is pretty good value for pick 41 for the production that Little has had. Yeah, he didn't have a great combine. He's not a phenomenal athlete. However, good production to Ole Miss. Very well-rounded player. But I think Garrett Bowles is athletic enough to move over to guard or even center, where they just lost Matt Paradis, as Bowles has been an okay offensive tackle. However, I think they should move him to guard. I think he can play a little bit better there. With the 42nd pick, the Bengals get Will Grier, quarterback, West Virginia. I've had them getting Grier multiple times. Solid combine, pretty good production, or actually very good production at West Virginia. However, wonky throwing motion, meh arm strength. I'm not huge on him myself. However, Andy Dalton, very mediocre, not the long-term guy. With a 43rd pick, my Lions get Juan Thornhill, defensive back from Virginia. Thornhill is very athletic, really good combine, 44-inch vertical, and the Lions have some talent in the secondary. Darius Slay on the outside at corner, Justin Coleman at nickel corner, Quandre Diggs is like a hybrid corner safety. However, we just cut Glover Quinn, and we need another outside corner, so I think we could develop Thornhill into one of those roles, or sort of like an extra hybrid alongside Quandre Diggs. I like this pick for the Lions. With the 44th pick, the Packers select Eric McCoy, center, Texas A&M. The Packers did just sign Billy Price to a gigantic contract. However, the interior of their offensive line is still not great. McCoy had a nice combine. I think he can play center as well as a little bit of guard. And I like this pick for Green Bay. I mean, I don't like it because that benefits Green Bay, but as an unbiased person, I think it's a good selection. With the 45th pick, the Atlanta Falcons select Elgton Jenkins, center, Mississippi State. Alex Mack isn't getting any younger, and the Falcons could use some help at guard. Like McCoy, I think Jenkins could always move over to one of those guard spots, and I think this is a nice pick for Atlanta. With the 46th pick, the Washington Redskins select Rocky Sin, cornerback from Temple. The Redskins need help in the secondary. Rocky Sin, very good in press coverage. Solid career at Temple, and his stock has been rising after a very nice Senior Bowl and a solid combine. With the 47th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Jachai Polite, edge rusher from Florida. Polite has had a very rough postseason draft process, rough combine, struggled in the interviews, bad pro day this week. He ran over a 540-yard dash. I think he ran like a 504, which isn't great. However, I don't view his bad pro day as much as other people. Remember, at the combine, he ran a 4.8, which isn't great, and I think he got injured while running it. However, we know that he can run somewhat fast, but also thinking about it, this was his only really good year at Florida. He was phenomenal this year, but he was not talked about his previous seasons with the Gators, and that makes this pick an extreme risk. However, Carolina just lost Julius Peppers. They need help on the edge, and I think it's worth the risk here at 47 to get Polite, who had a phenomenal year this year at Florida. And then with pick 48, the Dolphins get Chris Lindstrom, guard from Boston College. They need help at the guard spot, mainly right guard, and Josh Sitton's not getting any younger anyway, so it's good to get more O-linemen for Ryan Fitzpatrick this year and then Dwayne Haskins in the future. Pick 49, Paris Campbell falls into the Browns' laps. Love this pick for Cleveland. I think he can be an X factor for their offense. 4.31 speed, you can put him at receiver, running back, kick returner. I think they can use him in a number of ways, and he can sort of be that surprise player that defensive coordinators don't think about, but in all actuality, he's one of their biggest problems. With the 50th pick, the Vikings get Caleb McGarry, offensive tackle, Washington. It's simple. Need to improve the O-line. I think Jawan Taylor is athletic enough to move to guard. Not saying he would do that. However, Brian O'Neill did not show a lot of flashes, and I think McGarry could always move to guard as well. So overall, questionable pick technically, but it's still offensive line nonetheless. And I think this is a nice pick for Minnesota. Pick 51, Titans get Mac Wilson, middle linebacker, Alabama. They need help on the inside. They lost Avery Williamson last offseason, and they need a replacement for him. Wesley Woodyard's not getting younger as well. With the 52nd pick, the Steelers get Joe Giles Harris, middle linebacker from Duke. Ryan Shazier probably won't play another game in the league again, so as much as it hurts Steelers fans, you sort of have to move on from him. Not really. You still got to, love Shazier because he's done so much for their team. And I think the fact that the Steelers are still paying him his salary, still have him on the roster, I think that's really good. But at the same time, you have to realize that he's probably never going to play for you again. And you need a replacement, so that can be Giles Harris. Pick 53, Eagles got Damian Harris, running back, Alabama. Yes, they just traded for Jordan Howard from the Bears. However, the Eagles like to run multiple running backs. They lost Jay Ajayi. They might lose Darren Sproles. So they're going to need a replacement for Sproles, sort of. Not saying that Damian Harris is similar. And not to mention, Jordan Howard is on the last year of his contract. I'd be surprised if the Eagles re-sign him unless he has a really good year or he really wants to come back cheap. I'd expect Howard to be playing for a new team this time next year. With pick 54, Texans get Amani Oruwariye, cornerback, Penn State. Long, lean, good in press coverage, like the pick. And then they add another Penn State player, Miles Sanders, at running back. I think they need someone to complement Lamar Miller. Sanders had a really nice combine, and I think this is a nice pick. Patriots get Hakeem Butler with pick 56, big-bodied receiver. He's the poor man's DK Metcalf, as he ran a 4.43, big red zone threat type of guy. I think this is a really nice selection for New England, and hint, they're not done adding receivers. With pick 57, the Eagles add Taylor Rapp, safety from Washington. Looks like a weird pick, but when you think about it, Rodney McLeod was injured for most of last year, not getting younger. Malcolm Jenkins, very good player, not getting younger. Rapp doesn't have to play right away, and I do think he's somewhat raw, so if he redshirts for a year or two, this is a very nice pick for Philly. With pick 58, Dallas adds Caleb Wilson, tight end UCLA. Yes, Jason Witten is back, but you got to remember, he's like 37, 38, and he's only going to be back for a couple of seasons. Wilson is a very athletic, vertical threat, sort of a poor man's Noah Fant in a way. Colts get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, defensive back from Florida. He's sort of like Juan Thornhill, where he can play safety, corner, sort of like a hybrid, but he's not quite the athlete. However, he has had more college production. Colts don't really need a safety. They have Malik Hooker. They have, who else do they have? Like Clayton Gavers, Matthias Fairley. They're good at safety, but at corner, they could use an extra one. They have guys like Kenny Moore, Quincy Wilson, who are question marks. Decent players, but you really don't know. With pick 60, Niners get Trayvon Mullen, cornerback, Clemson. They need help at corner. Akel Witherspoon, not great. They have Richard Sherman, who's not getting younger, but he's still really good. I think Sherman and Trayvon Mullen could be a nice duo. Pick 61, Chiefs get Draymond Jones, defensive tackle at Ohio State. Big body in the middle of the run game, can create more opportunities for guys like Chris Jones. Saints add Gerald Willis III, defensive lineman from Miami. The Saints sort of have a weird defensive line. They have good players, guys like Cameron Jordan. They just signed Malcolm Brown from New England. However, I do think they need a little bit more, and I think the pick could be Gerald Willis. Chiefs add Jaquan Johnson, safety from Miami. They need another safety alongside the Honey Badger. Tyrann Mathieu, he can play nickel corner, he can play 3 safety, more of a coverage guy, whereas Johnson, hard hitter, more of a run stopper. And then pick 64, New England gets Andy Isabella, wide receiver from UMass. Yes, I just had been picking a wide receiver in Hakeem Butler, but taking a look at Isabella, he can be your slot receiver, and he also has blazing speed. 4.31, you can put him on the outside as a deep threat as well. Yeah, they have Julian Edelman, who's great. They have Philip Dorsett, who signed an extension. However, I think it was a short extension Chris Hogan, I think he started to take some steps down last year. He's not great. So getting a big-bodied receiver and a receiver of blazing speed. New England's receivers are always very balanced, but why not change it up, especially with the team changing within the next few years? Yeah, Butler and Isabella don't need to be great this year, but both of them, especially Andy Isabella, I think would be great for this offense. I think Bill Belichick is going to love having Isabella on the squad. We are now in round 3. We're going to go even more rapid fire. Cardinals get Josh Oliver, tight end, San Jose State. Ricky Seals-Jones is decent, but he has off-the-field stuff, and I feel like he's built more of like a wide receiver, so they could use a tight end. Pittsburgh could also use a tight end. They just lost Jesse James. And yeah, they have Vance McDonald, who's okay. He's okay at best. They could look to go wide receiver like Kelvin Harmon. However, I have them getting Caden Smith, tight end Stanford. And speaking of Kelvin Harmon, he goes with the next pick to the 49ers, as Jimmy G doesn't hurt to get him more weapons. You have Dante Pettis. You have Marquise Goodwin. They can stretch the field, especially Goodwin. So why not get more of like a bigger body, more of a short pass guy like Harmon? Pick 68. Jets get Anthony Johnson, wide receiver, Buffalo. There are better receivers on the board like Deebo Samuel. However, the Jets just signed Jamison Crowder. He's going to play the slot. So they need a big guy down the field. Quincy Enunwa has had injury problems. Robbie Anderson has had off-the-field stuff. They are both big bodies who can go down the field. However, that's when they are on the field. Johnson, I think this is a very nice pick for the Jets. Probably going to be more of a depth guy year one. However, I do think Anderson's contract will end next year, and I'm not sure how much longer Enunwa has. Pick 69, Jack get Voshon Joseph, linebacker from Florida. They could use some help on their linebacking core. I think him and Miles Jack, as well as Telvin Smith, I think that's a really nice trio. I have Voshon Joseph lined as a middle linebacker. However, I feel like he can play both inside and outside, and with Miles Jack, he's probably going to play outside. Pick 70, Bucks get David Montgomery, running back, Iowa State. Yeah, they have Ronald Jones, who was not really good at all last year. However, I still like Ronald Jones, and I think him and Montgomery can be a nice pairing. Pick 71, Broncos get Tyree Jackson, quarterback, Buffalo. Jackson has a very strong arm, big frame, somewhat mobile, needs to work on his accuracy. You know, some other AFC West quarterback who has talked about that when he came out of college? Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. Extremely strong arm, big frame, pretty mobile, but needs to work on his accuracy. Mahomes sat out for a year. What happened his first starting year? Won MVP. Not saying Tyree Jackson will win MVP, however, he sits out a year behind Joe Flacco, starts in the future, boom. Love this pick. I'm extremely high on Tyree Jackson. And then the Bengals get Montez Ivy, guard, Florida State. He can play guard and tackle. And the Bengals just flat out need help on their offensive linemen. Not much to explain there. Pick 73, Patriots get Trey Lamar, middle linebacker from Clemson. They have Juwan Bentley, who had a good rookie year, but he played like 2 games. Him and Lamar can be a nice duo, and if he's injury prone, then Lamar can be the main guy. Pick 74, Bills get Julian Love, cornerback, Notre Dame. I think they could use help at corner. They're pretty good with safety. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, they're both solid. However, at corner, all they really have is Tre'Davious White, who's really good, but that's about it. Pick 75, Packers get Devin Singletary, running back from Florida Atlantic. Small, but he's a very good playmaker, and the Packers don't really have a dynamic difference maker at the running back spot. Aaron Jones is good, but he's not dynamic. Pick 76, Redskins get Deebo Samuel, wide receiver, South Carolina. Good route runner, good hands, basically the Jamison Crowder replacement. Pick 77, Panthers get Riley Ridley, wide receiver, Georgia. Ridley is also a very good route runner, and sort of like Samuel, I assume will play in the slot. Carolina needs help at wide receiver, and hint, hint, they're going to get another one later in the 3rd round. Pick 78, Bucks get Cameron Smith, middle linebacker from USC. They just lost Quan Alexander, so makes sense. They need a new middle linebacker. Pick 79, Falcons get Jace Sternberger, tight end, Texas A&M. Austin Hooper's good, but he's on the last year of his contract. I don't know how much Atlanta's willing to pay him. And they also have guys like Deion Jones, who's going to be a free agent next year. Grady Jarrett. Keanu Neal is probably going to have his 5th-year team option accepted, but the year after he'll be a free agent. So I don't know how high Hooper is in the priorities. Pick 80, Browns get Yadi Kajuste, tight end, or tight end. Offensive tackle from West Virginia. Interior of a Browns O-line, Joel Bitonio, Kevin Zeitler, Austin Corbett, solid. They need help at guard. Or, not guard, they need help at tackle. I am making so many mistakes right now. Bitonio can always play tackle, so can Corbett. However, Cajuste is more of a natural tackle, so makes sense. Get a good offensive lineman for Baker Mayfield and company. Pick 81, the Vikings get Drew Samia, offensive guard, Oklahoma. They need O-line. Their offensive line can look like Brian O'Neill, Caleb McGarry, Pat Elflein, Drew Samia, Jawan Taylor. That is an actually respectable offensive line if those players develop. Pick 82, Titans continuing to improve their defense, going Daniel Wise, defensive lineman from Kansas. They spent a lot of money on offense, never spending a lot of draft resources on defense. Pick 83, Steelers get Mitch Hyatt, offensive tackle from Clemson. They just traded away Marcus Gilbert and Alejandro Villanueva isn't getting much younger. Pick 84, Seahawks get David Edwards, tackle from Wisconsin. Need help on the offensive line. Welcome to the team, Mr. Edwards. Pick 85, Ravens get Joe Yuan Williams, corner from Vanderbilt. Long, lean corner. Rough combine, however, still a very talented player. And I think this is a nice pick for Baltimore. Pick 86, Texans get Michael Jordan. That is his name, offensive guard from Ohio State. They added Jonah Williams earlier, so now get another good offensive lineman in Jordan who will play inside. Pick 87, Bears get Lonnie Johnson, corner from Kentucky. Another tall corner. There are a lot of tall corners in this draft class. Greedy Williams, Oruwe, Jennings, and Lonnie Johnson. They lost Bryce Callahan, who had a really good season, so good pickup. Then pick 88, Lions select Terry McLaurin, wide receiver from Ohio State. Very fast, likely won't be too impactful year one with Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, and Danny Amendola, but Amendola is on a one-year deal. Marvin Jones isn't getting any younger, and McLaurin does have some nice straight-line speed. Pick 89, Colts get Michael Deiter, offensive lineman from Wisconsin. The Colts drafted Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith in the first 2 rounds last year. So left guard, right tackle, those 2 positions are set. Ryan Kelly had a great year at center. That's set as well. However, left tackle and right guard are still a little bit of question marks. Anthony Costanzo at tackle, not getting any younger, so we're going to go with Deiter, who can play both guard and tackle. Cowboys add Connor McGovern, guard from Penn State. I think that Connor Williams is more of an offensive tackle, and he can probably play a little bit of right tackle as Lyle Collins. He's meh. Tyron Smith has injury stuff, and I think McGovern can play center as well. And Travis Frederick missed all of last year of an injury, so good to add depth. Niners add Darnell Savage, safety from Maryland. Very athletic. May not be needed early on as they have Jaquiski Pop-Tart is really good. Adrian Colbert's decent. However, they're both free agents in 2 years, and Colbert isn't great. Seattle gets Isaiah Buggs, defensive lineman from Alabama. That pick is supposed to be yellow because that's the pick they got from Kansas City when they traded up to get Cleveland Ferrell. But looking at the pick for Seattle, I think they could use some help on their D-line, especially inside. Jerron Reed, free agent at the end of the year. Nazir Jones, not great. Jets add Rush Pierce-Bacher, offensive lineman from Alabama. They could use help in the interior of their offensive line for Le'Veon Bell. Rams get Chase Winovich, edge rusher from Michigan. Good to add more edge rushers. Dante Fowler's only on a 1-year deal. I like Samson Ekubom. However, Fowler, not great. And Donald and Michael Brockers are more of like 3-4 edge rushers, which is sort of like a hybrid of like an edge rusher and defensive tackle in a way. Pick 95, Giants get Emmanuel Hall, wide receiver from Missouri. Good deep threat. Eli doesn't necessarily have the strongest of arms. However, I guess Hall won't get a lot of playing time early on. But next year, if they add like Tua or Justin Herbert, I think that could be nice. Redskins add Anthony Nelson, edge rusher from Iowa. They lost Preston Smith this offseason. They lost Trent Murphy last offseason. So they need some new pass rushers. 97, Patriots add Joe Jackson, edge rusher from Miami. Very solid player. The Patriots like to rotation edge rushers. He does not have to be a star, however. He's a pretty talented player. Nice pick for the Patriots. Jaguars select Titus Howard, offensive tackle from Alabama. Alabama State, sorry. Very underrated, extremely athletic, phenomenal ceiling, but not a great floor. They did just cut Jeremy Parnell, and I'm not entirely sure he's going to start at right tackle. Maybe Titus Howard, but he is quite raw. Pick 99, Rams get David Long, corner from Michigan. This is a steal at 99 considering the combine that David Long had. Marcus Peters, not a phenomenal cover corner. And then Aqib Talib, good player, but he's getting up there in age. Pick 100, Panthers select DeMarcus Lodge, wide receiver, Ole Miss. I told you with the Riley Ridley selection that the Panthers weren't done getting receivers. So you have the big body in DeMarcus Lodge, the slot good route runner in Riley Ridley, and then the deep threat in DJ Moore, who was their first-round pick last year. That's a nice core for Cam Newton right there if Riley and DeMarcus Lodge can develop, and I guess DJ Moore too. Pick 101. Patriots get Justin Lane, cornerback from Michigan. Patriots have some talent at corner. Stephon Gilmore, great. But other than that, Jason McCourty, decent player, but he's getting up there in age. J.C. Jackson, good year, but still sort of a question mark. And then outside of that, you got guys like Jonathan Jones, Duke Dawson. It's not great. They could use an extra one. And then pick 102, Ravens get Darrell Henderson, running back from Memphis. They signed Mark Ingram, however, they need another explosive playmaker on their offense. Henderson isn't necessarily the biggest, however, he has a very nice skill set. So that'll end the episode. 3 rounds. Hope you all enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and have a nice weekend.